to Color Me Happy. My name is Brandy Hofer. Thank you so much for being here. I sure do appreciate it. I am your host, and and I am your host and founder of Color Me Happy Community. We have an online group, and it's really great. And we also are growing aspects of our education at brandyhofer.ca. If you are part of our community, or if you follow us at Brandy Hofer Studios on Instagram, I will be announcing soon. We are launching a new site, and we're focusing on new classes and new fun, and of course I still sell artwork and all these great things. So we now have, and if you're tuning in, you're definitely interested in expanding your practice with murals, because this is just a really informative episode. It has everything in it, from community murals to getting grants and funding, to materials and everything you kind of need to know. So we also have our mural course, our brand new mural course that is just loaded from start to finish with everything. And it's so funny. So at the beginning, or right now, if you're listening, you won't see this, but if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching it on your whatever you're listening to for your podcast, you'll see me painting a mural. And it's so funny. I packed up the night before for this mural, and I didn't even take my own advice. I didn't go through my mural checklist before I left, and I literally just finished making this course, so it was hilarious. And I got there in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring a step ladder. And I said to myself, I should go through my own checklist just to make sure I won't forget. And I was like, I won't forget anything. I've done this so many times. Yep, I forgot an extension cord and a step ladder. But luckily enough, they had them there, which was total. It would have cost me an hour of my day to go back and get those things, and go back to the site and get back in the building and stuff like that. That's why I made the course. So, it's nice to know these things, right? And it's nice to have shortcuts and learn something that took me years to learn and experience, and I bundled it up for you in a short little course. So you're welcome, everyone. I hope you're well. How are you all doing? Spring is in the air, and it feels so freaking good. This is has to be my favorite time of year. Everyone's back out, coming out of hibernation and moving and shaking and happy to visit. It's just like this sweet spot, and it feels so very good. So enjoy this episode, and we'll chat with you all soon. Remember that you can become a member of our community. It's free, and we're so happy to have you there. We have some exciting news coming up in the spring, and the sketchbook project's starting back up, and you can join that. So check it all out, my friends. Thank you for being here, as always.
You're a part of my Color Me Happy community too?
Yeah, a little bit. I need to get more involved, Brandy, and I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Well, you will be now.
Yay!
You're a featured member. So yeah, so happy to have you here. I love chatting with you. You're just so bright and authentic and beautiful and great, and your art is just it's so great, and it's so open and people can receive it. That's the compliment I'm giving you in the best way. It's easy to love. Like there's so many beautiful things about it. So what we're going to talk about today is your work and a little bit of mine in public art. So to help people figure out, how to get into it. How do people find these opportunities, residencies, murals, installation, stuff like that, even applying to galleries. Like, how does that all happen? And my thing would be, you apply a lot. However, in my experience, reaching out, asking questions in my own community has been my best way of getting those opportunities. So it's kind of like advertising. Like advertising is always the last step. Like you can't just sell stuff to a cold audience, right? You have to they have to know you. They have to, and who better knows you than your community? So they're going to trust you when you're like, hi, I paint murals and I see you have this blank wall. And here is, I just think it'd be so cool. And the worst thing they can say is no, right?
Absolutely. I fully agree. I same thing. I apply to a lot of open calls and applications, but the thing, most of the work that I've gotten has been through a lot of networking too. So it is a happy medium of both. And also making sure, I think the first thing you need to start with is having a body of work. And that doesn't need to mean that it is a mural.
We'll have those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you do have
need to be other murals.
Consistent bodies of work to be like, I'm gonna that you should, because if you're gonna make it large scale, you have to know what you want to, what is going to communicate you in the best way possible. For me, that always kind of like evolves and changes, but like I've seen your murals and they are very like different but consistent to your theme and your work. And I think just the same as large scale painting, like you usually should like try a few on paper first or smaller, and then if it worked on paper in a smaller way, then you can scale it up, and then you can scale it up again, of course. And as you know, well, maybe not for your application, but for like my staining and mark making, that's really fucking hard to do on a mural.
Oh, I bet. No,
like throw a bucket of paint on a wall.
I have an artist friend. We were going to collaborate on a mural. It hasn't happened yet, but she is mixed media. And so to try to figure out how we are going to do that together. So we still might make it happen. Mine is easier to translate because it is hard edge and it's flat color. So it is just sectioning it off, and the harder part is just scale, which is the hardest part of mural anyway. But yeah, mine can translate pretty easy, other than the biggest change that I find with my murals is I have to go super minimal compared to what my paintings might be. In my regular canvas work, which is what most of my most of my practice is studio work, is I might have 30 different colors in it, maybe even more, because I'll mix something very slightly, right, just to do subtle changes. And there's lots of layers of lines and shapes over top of each other to create a abstract landscape look. So I find with murals, the biggest challenge for me is two things. I have to scale down my colors and the layers. Like I have to simplify it as easy as I possibly can, or it would take me months to finish a painting.
No, it has to be efficient, and you have to be conscious of material cost.
For sure. And then the second thing is, when I do my studio practice, I don't really know what I want the painting to look like in the end. I have an idea of the mood and the horizon line and, what time of day or season that particular painting is going to be, but I just kind of let the painting go. And majority of my work is artist resolve, of fixing things up and figuring out why this isn't working and getting there. So I can't do that with murals either. I have to know exactly what I want it to look like in the end. Otherwise, I'm just wasting paint and time. So it's a new thought process for me doing mural or larger scale work, because I have to be efficient and I have to just shift instead of the process.
Yeah.
It's more about end result and logistics in there.
Yeah. And not only that, but typically in the case of a mural and public art, it has to be approved first. So it has to be pre-designed digitally.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the best way to, I'll talk about my process and you can talk about yours. But for me, I have an iPad. So I have an iPad and I use Procreate, and I do the design on there. So mine would obviously be a little bit different, so using different pens, but also just and this is where the creative part falls, but I just like kind of layer in different of my old paintings and see what like splashes or mark making kind of shows up. I also use Photoshop, so I pop it back and forth between but that's a creative process for me. I pop it back in between Photoshop and Procreate on my iPad and Photoshop on my laptop, and try to find those happy accidents, but then of course scale them. And then the client needs to approve it, right? Who you're working with, or not only just sometimes a client, but a board of people.
Yes.
Which I am going through right now. So a new proposal. And so there, sometimes it's like 12, it depends how much you want the project. If someone was extremely hard to deal with and it was like a 6x5 foot wall, I might be like, I'm not doing this anymore. It probably won't work out in the end between us if it's 12 times. But when it's huge and it's going to be there for probably after you're gone, it's got to be right. So take your time, right, and work with the people and see if it's a good fit, which you should feel from the get-go. But what is your creative process when working with people?
Sure. Mine's a little bit more old school. I've never embraced digital very well yet. So I'm still more old school. I do sketches. So I've got my Posca pens and play with that. It's also because I enjoy that. I enjoy the drawing process. So I use that. I have Procreate now. My daughter, my 13-year-old, uses it more than I do. So she'll teach me soon. But I am also really lucky. So most of the time I just do sketches and work with the clients from that. And I haven't had an issue. And I do have connected with some other muralists on Instagram, and they've also do old school too. So I think it's whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever works for your particular process. And I was saying I'm pretty lucky. I have a really good friend who is a creative design whiz. She was a creative lead at her employment for a long time, and she's now a full-time artist. So she will sometimes help me with that if I am having some design issues and I need to come up with some ideas. She can do it in 10 minutes, whereas it would take me a whole day to figure that out. So it's asking for help. And usually I can pay her with a bottle of gin or, for dinner. So it's, if you don't have those skills, don't let that stop you, is kind of what I'm trying to say, is find ways to make it work. And when I'm with a client, I say it is going to be a sketch. It's not going to be a digital. Like I'll be honest and let them know. And I've never had an issue with a client expecting something digital, as long as they can understand what the color palette's going to be, what I'm going for, why I've chosen those particular designs to show them. I've never had an issue.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Because we get so overwhelmed and we get so, well, I don't know how to do this, so I shouldn't, or I don't want to take the time and effort to learn. Or if you don't know how to do something, you can genuinely find someone who will, and you don't all the time have to pay them. Like, again, like there's so many beautiful creatives out there. You just ask them, and usually they're willing to trade. Like I always have traded art.
Yeah.
So custom artwork or something I have in stock. And it's just, and then you create these relationships and these working relationships, and people who I used to trade with now I can afford to pay. And then we work together. And so, never be afraid to ask if you don't know how to do something. And if someone can do it more efficiently than you, of course.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I also think too, that's also when you're doing your budget proposals, include that in there. If there has to be that, you're going to need to hire somebody to help you out with a design process or scaling or whatever it needs to be. If that needs to happen, just include that in there. So that it could be under your artist fees, it could be included, but make sure you think of that along the way. And it might only be a few $100s, but it's worth it to make sure if that's something that you're going to feel comfortable with. Like don't keep that, don't shortchange yourself on that if you do need to hire out.
Let's talk about budget, right? Let's talk about budget.
Okay.
And being conscious of what is in your budget. So the best way to find that out is to talk to, or research online, or talk to another public or mural artist, because there are just things you don't think about. when it comes to budget. You need so never, if someone asks you like that they want this and this and that, always take your time and say, thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity. Let me get back to you on a price. And then you sit down and take your time and work out. And that should be any job actually. But this one is very important because material costs are very high. So there's a lot at stake, and you don't want to be caught in the position of all your time being taken and not being paid for it, which we so often are and have been in the past. So take it from us who've already done it, made the mistake. People involved. So all the services, as you talked about, all the services that you need to include, whether it be photography, videography, digital design, what else? Like some of mine are now including a project manager, because we'll be working with like the city and a whole bunch of people where we need someone to organize like everyone showing up on particular days, and the communication and the emailing, and or hire out someone to do budget, right? A team. Some of these really big projects need to include a team. So you have to sit down and be conscious of what you need for what you're doing, and taking your time to communicate with your client, and you can show them, what is included to a certain degree, like my fee includes this. Right? Did I miss? Oh, and like thinking about like the meetings and the lead up and all of that too. Like you have to be really conscious of that. And then the way I charge is per square footage. So like 10 by 8 would be 8 by 10 times 27, right? Or whatever you decide to charge. So that is the formula. Do you want to talk about, did I miss?
Sure. I think for formula, when you say that, I've been recommended that anywhere between $20 to $40 per square foot. Some of the projects you might want it, you can go a little bit lower if all of your other expenses are being covered in there as well. Like it depends, but I also agree. I try to price along those lines for it. A couple things that for a recent project that I also included in the budget, it was a grant application. And so I also had within my artist fees, I upped my artist fee a little bit to include insurance, because I don't have full, and this was something I learned about. Again, we're in Canada. I don't know what it's like in the United States, if anybody is watching down there, but I didn't realize you needed mural insurance. And some people probably do it without, if it's a private residence or something like that. But I will always do it just because I'm a mom, and just always I'm very much into making sure that I've got full coverage for everything. So I don't have full year long because I don't do enough. So I do the mural insurance project based, and you can just work with a local insurance company, find out who deals with mural. Sometimes it's called performer insurance too, if they don't know what that's under. And it's not cheap. Like for a 2-week project, it can be $300 or $400. So keep that in mind. If you're including that in your artist fee, up your artist fee by that handful of money for that, as well as a couple other things I included in there. I had included, to think of it, but I ended up being able to get it done for free, is power washing. So prep for your wall. Does the client, are they going to clean it? Do you need to clean it? Is that in the budget? So that's part of a conversation that needs to happen. It might not need to be cleaned, but that is something that should be part of a discussion before you start painting.
Exterior, typically they do, and or sometimes need to be repainted.
Right? Exactly.
Be resurfaced or sealed.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing full coverage on brick, like, and some really absorbent brick, if it's not covered with latex, it's gonna be an effort. It's going to be so absorbent. So to seal those things first. And then while we're on the subject of like lead up to a mural is coating. So I know there's a new product and I want to get it. I know there's a new product out there where it's only one final coat, and I really want to get my hands on it. I saw some artists in the US using it, and or some people don't weather coat, which I don't believe that you should.
No, but it's good to know because I didn't know all of the elements too. And also it depends how long you want something to be. If it's a mural that's going to be up for 3 to 5 years, you might not need to worry about the latter stages that Brandy's talking about right now. But if it is something that's going to be on longer or is in a high traffic area, it is good to think of those. I'm lucky out here in Calgary, there is a company that I hired. They're called Goodbye Graffiti, and they did an anti-graffiti spray on my recent mural. The only thing is that I had super bright colors, so bugs were attracted to it. So there's actually bugs now fossilized in the spray. So like there's a whole section where there's like a whole bunch of like big bugs that are forever.
They might be using that new product if they didn't have to do a whole bunch of coats. I will put it up in the notes. I just forget what it's called now, but it is, it's a new, because murals are becoming so wildly worldwide popular. So they've come out with this great project. Another aspect we should talk about is community involvement in the way of sponsorship. So if you don't want to go the grant route, and my community is really supportive. So a lot of times for these projects, if they want to be a part of it, you can include them in all of the social media and include their logo on your site and all of that. You can offer like a sponsorship package. So that's a trade-off for exposure on their end, and or if their heart is in a project. So they can be your paint sponsor, right? People can sponsor a mural to get it on a wall, and Bump in Calgary already has like all that stuff in place because they're just a big conglomerate of mural making. But if you want to do this independently, like that's also an option too if you're a bit of a mover and a shaker, right?
Absolutely. Or if you are working with a specific community association, that could be something that you could work with, or a local business within there. I haven't had to do that yet, but that has been discussions that we've discussed within our community about maybe doing something where I live. The recent one that I did was fully a grant, so we didn't need to worry about that. But for sure, I think it's being creative of finding, is it the business that's going to pay? If it's not a business, is there a grant that you can get? Is there sponsorship? Like there is ways to do it. So that's why there's no reason to undercut what you're asking for it. And also a big thing that I find with undercutting is just you're doing a disservice to other artists in your community. Because if you're doing it for an eighth of the cost and actually not really making any money, you're not educating people of how much work a mural is going to be. You're ripping yourself off, and you're not really creating an environment where people understand how much public art is worth. So that's also something I feel, is that you're not just hurting yourself, you're also hurting your fellow artists and an artist community. So it is worth it to ask for what the value should be, and keeping all those additional expenses, like even that graffiti spray for my last project, I under budgeted because their expenses went up dramatically through COVID, and I didn't know that. So I had to eat some of that cost, but it was still, that was just a learning lesson for me. Always have a little bit of a miscellaneous budget in there too, for if expenses go a little bit higher for whatever reason. So it's really, really important to find ways to get that extra money. If it is a sponsorship, or a grant or a trade or whatever it is, you can always find a way to make it work. And if the client isn't willing to pay it, then they're not the right client. Like that's just as simple as that. It has to be worth your time, because it is a commitment, and it might be a week or 2 weeks of painting, but there is months of prep before that to get it ready.
So much time and prep. I can't stress that enough. And you're so right. You want to support your creative community and yourself, and you want to give everyone should be paid for their services. Not only that, finding the right clients to work with, you do have to be super picky because it is such a huge undertaking. And if something doesn't work out and you did put a little time and energy and meetings and all that into it, like, let it go. It sucks, but the right people will come along. They always do, and the right opportunities come along. So you're very, I know you're strong at grant writing and proposals because you do get those opportunities. I, however, and I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want to put any like of that on myself, but I am not as strong as you are when it comes to that. So I know people sometimes hire out people, or some of the women in my area for this upcoming project that we're working on, a very big community project. I've actually, some women have just in the city have been like, I will help you write these grants, or I took grant writing in university. You can either hire someone or ask out in your community to find someone who may be able to help you, because you don't want to not, you want to apply for grants. I've had so many no's on grants, and I'm applying right now because and I'm really hoping to get it because I'm going to New York and I'm booking it regardless. So I'm hoping to get a travel grant, which aren't, I don't think, as challenging to get as because it's not so big as a project grant. But yeah, so you can get support. You can always find support.
Yeah.
And I think that's what one of the grant writing ladies told me such a long time ago. She's like, you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
And I was just
People
so
like to do it.
I was just like, yes, well, no one's helping, no one's offering. So, and now and it was the same kind of project, and it was just so many years ago. And now people, like, the things are coming together, which is so crazy. And it was just, the timing wasn't right then, and the timing is right now. So be patient.
Exactly.
Be patient for 4 or 5 years.
Well, and also within that 4 or 5 years, you can be doing small projects. Like I did, I'm still new at public art. My only biggest, like, my new projects were last year, and I did an interior project with a friend last year, which was quite large. And then I did one mural this year. And I think I'm only going to be doing a couple a year. I find it physically challenging at my age. I'm not a young lady anymore. And I find that it's physically really a lot of extra work. And so you don't have to have big goals of doing a massive, like here in Calgary, there's an amazing German artist who just did the world's tallest mural on one of our buildings, and he had a team of 4 who had to do major training. They were local artists, and it took them quite a long time. It's gorgeous. It's amazing. They even had to rappel from the top of the building. Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, I saw all that.
That's not even in my aspirations. Like, that, if I can get a wall where I just need a ladder, that's fine. Like,
I know.
you don't need to.
I thought I did, but now that, like, a project of very large scale is encroaching in my next year, I'm just like, this might be my, like I said, like, I've done over 10, which isn't crazy, but, and some big ones, but I wouldn't say, like, I'm going to have to think really hard now about where I put my time and energy. And you have to think about that, especially with the family and, time in our so small summer window of what you're going to do. So I'm taking this one on because it's not just about me, and it's not about the mural. It's about our community and what it's going to do for our community. So that's what I'm really focusing on, and trying to not be afraid of the physicality and the mental that is going to go into the execution, because there's something greater at play for this one, but it might be my first and last.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that somebody has to really figure out is where are their goals, where do they want it to fit in their art practice, and they're like public art doesn't have to be large walls. It can be the project that I was part of with Bump, which is Beltline Urban Mural Project last year, was really great. It was called Roadworks, and we had Jersey barriers. So those are those concrete barriers that are about 3 feet high and 10 feet wide. That usually are just concrete and boring and gray. And they hired, there was 9 of us. They hired us to paint those, and I had 5. So you did front, back, and edges. And it's surprisingly how long it took to do those, because we had to, but those were great because what they use them for, it was a project, because it was last summer. So out here in Calgary, a lot of the patios in some of the main hubs needed to be extended out because of COVID. Still, most people were out on patios. So they extended patios and businesses onto sidewalks. And so that meant that they had to do temporary sidewalks, which would cut off part of the roadway, actually. So instead of just having ugly barriers, they put these new art barriers up along those areas. So it was a win-win for everybody. There's public art. They hired local artists, so there could be no complaints about hiring out of the area. So local artists, especially most of us were rookies at murals, so that hit that possibly there. And it was a safety feature for the businesses and the people there, which also then supported the businesses in getting more people to come there. So it was a hugely popular thing. And even though it wasn't massive, it was fantastic for me because my friends would be walking by or family members would go there. And I had for like weeks, I'd have people sending me photos of be like, look what I found, and they take a photo by my little Jersey barrier. So that is public art too. Doesn't have to be a massive wall. It can be that.
It can be so many things. It can be yarn wrapping a bench or a tree, or
totally.
it can be, and not only that, you can involve youth because some public art is so approachable, and like it can be beautiful community projects. It can be working with different centers in your community, and you can teach your skill to others. Like that's how approachable it can be. You're so right. I saw that project and it was very inspiring. You guys did an amazing job. It was, what neighborhood did it go into?
It was mainly 17th Avenue and Kensington. So kind of some hubs around here that are popular. And this year they hired even more artists. So I think there's probably in total about 80 around the city now of those Jersey barriers. Wow. And so they're everywhere now. And so it's mainly the downtown core because it's that plan still to support those businesses. And but yeah, and they stayed out year round, which was great. So they just moved them from where the patios were. They moved them to different locations. So mine are now by our beautiful public library and somewhere along walkways and pathways over the winter time. So it's a super smart project. It's not an easy one because those concrete barriers are, about 1,500 or 2,000 pounds or something like that. So it was they did need to partner with the city who had the equipment to be able to do that. And then also you needed the painting location to do that. So it isn't just something you can just probably do yourself. But it is for sure, if you've got a town or a city that might be willing to do that, it is a really, those Jersey barriers are everywhere anyway. So might as well paint them and make them look good, and they last relatively well too. So none of us put most of us put some sort of primer on. Concrete primer is what I used, and then that anti-graffiti spray was put on after. And there's chipping for sure, and like it's not perfect, but people
it's cement, right?
Yeah, it's cement, and so but it really overall they've lasted, and it's been so. I never would have thought of doing something like that before. So when I was asked to do that project, it was like, this is perfect. Other than I had to get knee pads because came down low. That was it.
You don't know the physicality of something until you're in it and you're like, oh gosh.
But it was great.
I did talk about that in my course. I'm like, okay, so you need to pack water and a hat and sunscreen. Like you just you have to go over every little thing because you just don't know until you arrive. And the worst thing is when you arrive and you don't have the proper materials and you have this timeline, right?
Yep.
But also you don't know who and what you're going to spark around the world. And that's a beautiful thing about social media is that, okay, so I simply like, well, not simply, I paint with my kids here and I have them interacting. And then we're starting Art Academy in the fall with our public school system. So that will be, I will be showing them what public art is like, and I will be involving them in community projects. So I just do that and I show it, and I'm very proud of it. And this artist who is a public artist, Camille, oh geez, here's my thing about names. I will just look her up very quickly. Camille, here we go. She'll come up because Camille Miles. So she's Georgian Bay. Why was she? I thought she was in Montreal, I think. Maybe. Anyways, she did it. Anyways, she's somewhere. Here she is. So she tagged me one day and she's like, inspired by Brandy Hofer Studios. And she had like 40 kids like install this public mural thing. And I was like, what? How is that inspired by? And she's just like involved. It just sparked an idea of her doing this community public installation mural. She was featured by the Jealous Curator this year. She does really cool installations as well. So just like always doing neat new things, but she decided to involve youth in her community and did this like very long wall, and it's so cool to see. So you don't know who you're going to affect when you do these projects around the world. And I think it's so important to put the effort in and use your ideas and use your magic and use your sparks and use your voice, because it really genuinely will make this world a better place.
I wanted to ask you about one of the projects that you had done. It was, can you tell me a little, oh, that's my cat, everybody. Sorry if you hear, he's fine. He's just wanting attention. Can you tell me about the project that you did, Brandy, that was something about recycled materials?
Yeah, so the city is doing a new like green community area, and it was very last minute. They needed to install it before the snow flied last October or something. And they're like, next week, can you do this? So they were like 15 by 10 feet panels, and then they put it together as a gazebo. So in the winter, they used it as like a put on your skates area. And then in the summer, like a shaded. So it was going to be the central part of the new community eco playground, and just in one of the older areas in our city. So they're like, hey, Brandy, can you do this, but like in like 4 days? And I was like, and then they had, so there was a sponsor. So there was a sponsor, the Cooperators, Jason Arden. And so they had a look. They had, which was actually, oddly enough, a little bit similar to your style. So they had a look and a brand. And they were like, it needs to kind of go with this. And can you do it? And as we know, with drying time. So I had like 24 hours to do this with those weatherproofing coats. So I started very early in the morning. So it was built, so it was an eco space. So it was built by Ecoplast, and they build homes and like cabins and every sort of, like they can do any sort of building, but instead of being built with like plywood and drywall and framing, it's just different thicknesses of recycled bottles.
Amazing.
Yeah. So not like, it's like a material, and there's like, it feels like plexiglass. So being in their shop was the worst, I have to say. And I was fully ventilated the whole time because I have breathed in plexiglass before. And this is a safety thing for all creatives to consider, is know the materials you're working with. And I was wearing a vent mask when I was sanding plexiglass, and it was the wrong filter. So it went through my vent mask and into my lungs, and I was sick for 3 months. So always know what you're working with and what equipment you need beforehand. But this was just so cool because I got to learn about Ecoplast, and I'm like, I want to build a studio retreat for artists out of recycled bottles now.
Yes.
It's a tiny project.
That's amazing. I love it. I'm glad you brought up about safety, because I guess I also wasn't clear with my materials. I use mainly exterior household paint. So that's something I feel comfortable with because I use paint in my practice. But I do know many murals are successfully done with spray paint. And I've played with spray paint myself. So again, back to doesn't always have to be a major project. I had some plywood in my garage that had been there forever, and my fence needs some repair. So my girls and we did our own little mural to cover up our ugly fence last year, and we used spray paint because I was like, oh, this is just for us, we can play with it. And I was like, oh, we're outside, it's okay. And yeah, my 9-year-old, she felt nauseous and I felt sick, and so I learned that I didn't do enough research in using spray paint. And so same thing, if I ever use spray paint again, which is something I hope to learn more about, I will absolutely get all of the equipment, no matter if you're inside, outside. I know I'm super sensitive when it comes to respiratory things, and I felt really awful for a couple of days after, and I used it for maybe an hour. Like, it wasn't all day or anything. And so yeah, it's a very good point that if you are new to those things, think small scale, play with it small, learn everything you can. Don't shortcut on safety, whether it is when you need a lift, get all the training, do it properly. Don't ever put yourself in a situation that is unsafe for any part of your art practice, but especially for public art. It has to be. And if you do have to buy those materials, like say you're doing that, include that in that grant or in that proposal or whatever. If there is new materials that you don't have yet, put that in your supply list and get them to help pay for it.
Exactly. And spray paint, I have used it. It is really great for efficiency and coverage. However, like one bottle does not last very many square feet, right? So if you're doing big, and you need one color, it's not going to give you a lot of coverage, right? I love it for, like it would be really great if you had areas where you had small color blocking. And you tape off the area, but you also have to be conscious of the mist. The mist can go on your skin, your clothes, and in your lungs. And so you have to, I always wear sleeves and coveralls and a vent mask and everything and I've used it on interiors as well, but those interiors everything has to be covered in plastic, and because there's so much mist. And when I come out of the misty rooms and spaces, I smell for a while. It's crazy. So it's nothing to take lightly.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. No, I'm glad you brought that up because
your fingers can hurt.
Yes, your fingers can hurt. Back to the physicality of it. There's weird things that you would not expect.
I wonder if there's a tool. I'm sure some seasoned muralists, but it's hard to use tools because like your finger has the sensitivity and the, of getting the strokes right. So yeah, you develop, I think, better hand muscles after a while. But at first I've done it, and yeah, my freaking hands hurt after doing them, right? So yeah, lots to think about. But anything else that I think we covered quite a bit about public art. Also searching, murals timeline. So for a lot of mural projects, because our season here in Canada is so short, February, March. So I think you should start researching On social media, you can follow hashtags, and then the algorithm will just pick up on what you're looking for eventually. And you can see what other muralists are doing and public art artists are doing, and the festivals that they're in. And then you can be prepared and note the deadlines that are coming up, which are usually February, March, or April, to apply to those, and or just keep in mind projects that you want or you think you can partner with, or you have an idea to do an installation and work in your community. Plan through the winter. We have long winter days, and I think that would be like planning ahead. These projects take a lot of time. So think like year in advance, I would say.
Yep, I fully agree. The project that I did this summer was, we received the thumbs up from the grant organization in December. I connected in January, February with the community board because it was a community project. However, I was the main lead, and we were getting some volunteers, but it was still kind of mainly me doing the painting. And so within there, that gave me time to do research, give me time to come up with designs, give that to the board, give them a month to vote on which design, then another good month for me to get all the supplies and that all the washing the walls, all those kind of things, getting my volunteers organized ahead of time. So it almost felt a bit anticlimactic by the time the mural came around, because I had done all this work and it was sort of like, let's just get going. But we also chose, so back to Canada and weather, we wanted the mural to be ready in time for Stampede. They had a Stampede breakfast they were doing. And so that's July here in Calgary. And so we chose to do it in June. But June in Calgary is also very rainy and unpredictable. So I had to actually adjust my mural plan. So because I do hard edge, we used a chalk line to put all the, measure it all out and put it all out there. But because it would sometimes rain, so we would have to keep an eye on the sky, and we wouldn't want to put too much paint down at a particular moment in case the rain just started to come in. So I actually hired one of my friends. This was also another cost that I wasn't really planning to incur, but it was worth to hire her. So I hired her, and what we did is we would chalk line a certain spot, and then we would use paint and just outline that particular where the chalk line was, so that if it did rain, it didn't wash away the chalk lines. Mm-hmm. So we would just block things out. That's normally not how we would do the full process, but because it worked out great, because then we had these lines there with the paint and we could then just fill it in. And then I could get volunteers to fill in the areas, almost like painting between the lines. So the process wasn't exactly how I initially wanted to do it, but it worked out to be really great. So having to accommodate the rain and the weather and doing it little bits and increments actually worked out really fantastic. So it's keeping that sort of thing in mind, and that's why small projects are a good idea. And one project I wanted to let all of you know about, I haven't personally done, but it's really becoming popular here in Calgary, is garage doors. So there was a whole community that was doing a whole project on that. And it was great for anybody who wanted to learn about doing murals. They're relatively close to the same size, not exactly, but if you're quoting it, it's not going to be super drastic like some walls would be. So if that is something you're interested in, is working on garage doors is a really, really great start. And it gives you something that you only need maybe a small step ladder for, and you don't need to invest in a ton of equipment to start. So if you're looking for something new to start, that's a good thing to think of or to get into, or something
or panels, anything. Absolutely. Really, right?
Totally.
Fences, but you have to know with wood, it just comes off.
Yeah.
Eventually, right? I did one on a whole fence once, and she's like, "It's coming off." I was like, "Well, it's been 5 years, so
yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Just like you have to repaint your fence, right? We've done a few actually. So just for fun and showing kids the process. And I sometimes have my neighborhood kids come in, even though I had already done murals. But you can practice interior. Like we do it on the studio wall all the time. And of course, it breaks their hearts when I paint it over. My rainbow. They're like, oh. And I was like, it's really blue in here now and I can't see anymore. It has to be white and bright, right? Like it just got too dark in my studio, the way the light bounces. So, and their frickin' trampoline blocks the window. So I'm like, you guys are you're wrecking the light in my studio. No, not wrecking, but I have to, keep all those things in mind all the time. I think we will wrap up. We covered so much, and biggest thing is try smaller things first to see if you like it.
Yeah, it is. Try it and put your name out there. Put your try those little things. Have that body of work to start with so somebody knows what your style would be potentially like. And do little projects. Don't be scared to apply though too. Like if there is something big, because if you do get a big wall or you do get a project, you can always hire a team too. That's also something that hasn't been talked about, but is lots of big public art artists don't actually even do the work themselves because they might be in Berlin and the project is in Portugal or something. Like there's so sometimes they will even hire commercial painters to support and help out. So there is all these ways to be able to get things done. And you can always do it in a team project too. Like you talked about the collaboration for the big project that you're working on. And that was something I did last year is I was asked to do a major project in a very short timeline. So I worked with one of my friends and we had a blast and our styles worked really well together. And there's always solutions to be able to make things happen. So don't be scared. Don't be scared to put your name out there if that's something you're really interested in doing. And murals and public art isn't for everybody either. It might not be something.
Yeah, you have to be conscious about the fact that if you take on a small mural project, I can sit with that same amount of time and make an original piece of art and sell it for more. So for me to take on a small mural project isn't a good idea anymore. And I've learned that. But I'm such a yes person. So I just will just have to pass it on to another maybe emerging artist or sometimes styles don't fit my style. And I always find an artist to recommend because I like supporting my creative community. That's a great way too. Like, thank you so much for thinking of me. This person might suit what you're looking for a bit better. Or, so be really conscious of your time and energy always.
And don't feel bad about asking people questions. There's no stupid questions. So whether you want to reach out to Brandy or I'm still consider myself a bit of a rookie in the public art realm, but feel free to reach out to me and I connect you with other people who are interested because I had a mentor last year when I was doing my small project and she was somebody who had done murals before. And some of the things she told me, like, again, get the knee pads. I was like, good point. Just little tricks that she told me.
Even if you're not a rookie, there's things I don't think of all the time or I forget, right? Like I haven't done one for like 6 months and you just forget.
Yeah. And it's
so
great.
Like you mentioned things and I'm like, oh, right. Like go back and I just made a note. Look at your mural PDF you made.
Right.
You should almost do a checklist every time so you don't forget all the stuff you had to do, right?
Most artists are very generous. I'll be honest, I've rarely ever encountered an artist who won't give me some sort of information or tips, especially if it is about logistics or process. Most people are very happy to share what it takes to get things done. And so, reach out. It doesn't have to even be somebody in your community. Reach out, or it could be somebody like Brandy who's creating a course. Like, look for those sort of things. And I even took, I can't remember the artist's name right now, but there was a pretty inexpensive online course about spray paint. And so I did that online. It was just on your own time. And I did it, and I didn't get through the whole thing because some of it was getting into portraiture, which is not my style. But I learned about the different caps of spray paint and why you use different ones and how this and things that I didn't know. And when you go to the art store, they don't usually have time to tell you. So look online to see if there is things like that out there. And most artists are willing to kind of share their knowledge and take that as a huge compliment.
For sure. No, actually, Kevin Lido has agreed to come on the podcast. So we'll be talking about murals, which will be really cool. Because he's
amazing.
He definitely has installs a lot, and like, it's crazy. Like, but he's a studio artist as well. So I'm really looking forward to, and he'll be the first male I'll have on, because I'm just like, maybe he'll say yes to an interview, and he did, which is crazy. But I love his stuff because he's a portrait artist too, and I love portraiture, and it always blows my mind. I'm like, my biggest and exciting question for him is, what kind of grid method do you use?
Yes.
There you can use a projector, but you have to think about height and a plug-in and all this stuff. And so typically it's a doodle grid or a grid, which we didn't talk about. But this is why taking a class, so mine will be available at the Milan Art Institute. When you take a class and it's like, what, $150, $200 when you think about your project, to have everything covered and learning, that in an efficient amount of time is like worth it times 10. And just like checking the boxes and making sure you're doing everything and following through, and the different ways and methods you can do something. So even in my course, I made sure to hook up other YouTube videos, because there are other methods, there are other artists, there is so much to learn, but like, these are the basics. And it's so, it's like a huge shortcut. Or a mentor, you can hire a mentor. What else? Oh, you know who helped me a lot, and you said the art store wasn't helpful, but the paint spot. When I first started learning about murals, they stayed on the phone with me and answered so many questions about material, and were so super helpful, especially when I had been in the midst of doing research, because I had a 50-foot project going on, 50 by 14 feet. And it was my first one. So I had like so much, I'm like, I don't get it. So they stayed on the phone with me and went through like all the weatherproofing step by step. And then of course I had to learn while installing. And that's a perfect example too, right there, of like, I had no freaking clue. I had no freaking clue what I was doing, but I wanted to so badly try murals. And now it's just like so special. I talk about in my book how like people stop me, and one lady, I was masked and in a toque and in like winter or home sense at like 8 p.m. at night, and she's like going past with a push broom, and she's like, "Oh, hey, Brandy." Like, how do you know? It's like this is all you can see of my whole, how are you? I just have to say that every time I pass by, and that was the one I did, the 50-foot one, every time it just lights up my day, and it means so much to me. So it's just so special, the things that creatives bring to this world. You're making a difference in people's lives.
Well, and I think that's the last thing I would like to comment on, is that the reason I like to do public art, and again, I don't do it like a Kevin Lido or prolifically like somebody like him, who that's where most of us know their work. I'm still a studio artist mainly, but I know not everybody can afford one of my $2,000 paintings or have the space on their wall, or maybe it's not even their aesthetic to have that in their home. I know that, but I love public art in the way that my art can be in a location where anybody can enjoy it for free, and they can interact with it, they can take photos with it, they can look at it up close. Like there's something about that just feels really rewarding, to be able to have people enjoy it. And I think it does create art appreciation as well, because when they're surrounded with it, with public art, whether it's murals or other sort of projects that are around, people start to see how art can make their life better, just like that amazing compliment you got from that lady. So once it's around more, then people go, oh, wow, this is pretty amazing. This is great. And then they start to maybe consider to, you mentioned HomeSense that you're shopping in. Maybe they won't buy the HomeSense painting, and instead they'll go buy an affordable piece of art from a local artist or something instead, because they see how art can impact their community. So I strongly believe in that. Whether it's me doing a project, it doesn't have to be. I think as long as there is art that we live with around us all the time, I think it's important. So I will always be a huge advocate for public art, whether I'm actually the one doing the project or not.
Well, you're so right. Like it can change a whole community, like especially Calgary. Like look at how their initiative basically changed the whole entire city.
Yes.
Right. And now it's like an international mural festival that is like it's people all around the world want to be a part of it. So I always say public art can turn any space into a thriving public destination. So if you think about, not only, of course, it's always the heartbeat of a community, but if you look at a commercial standpoint, like my one mural gets 10,000 visits a year. So just not only that, but it's a great investment for businesses, because people are taking pictures, they're taking their locations, they're like, it's just such a no-brainer to dip into your, like companies have huge advertising budgets, like insane. So companies just take a little lump. Like it's nothing crazy for companies to take a lump of their advertising. It's the biggest it's the best ad spend they will ever make.
I agree. I fully agree. And it's great
to impact their community in a positive way.
I still talk like that. I'll be like, oh, it's buy the mural that looks like blah, blah, blah. Like it's a top level placemaking sort of opportunity for any businesses or community. No, my community that I live in, we're working on a beautification committee. I don't have a whole ton of extra time right now to dedicate it to myself to be involved, but we're hoping to work with some youth in our neighborhood to get at least some kind of different phases. And it always doesn't have to be something big. It can be, right now we're looking at maybe some panels that will go on a fence. And then when we can get some more money or have more time to do more grant writing, we can maybe do something else. Like it can be baby steps to get things done. Because there's permissions you have to get and all these other things that sometimes it's just easier to do the simplest thing to start. And then we can maybe do something a bit more complex and bigger scale later on.
Okay. I gotta go.
Thank you, Brandy.
My kids are gonna bust in soon. They went and got groceries with their dad, and they just like, when they're here, it's like, woo.
That's okay.
Also why I've had trouble recording my book.
Well, I want to say good luck with your book. Good luck with your mural course. Good luck with this massive project. And and anybody feel free to reach out to us if they have any questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'm happy to find it for you.
This was such a gem. There's so much information loaded into this hour and some. I always go over. I can never set a timer because I genuinely love chatting with friends so much.
Thank you so much. I hope you have something or many things to take away from that episode. And thank you to my friend who just like, for her time and wealth of information. Another fellow Canadian artist based out of Calgary. I don't know what she's this interview is a little bit old. I was saving it for mural season just for you, and I hope I'm gonna check what kind of upcoming projects she has, and I'll put it in the notes and you can check her out. Welcome. It's been I'm recording our large scale portrait class right now, and I've been burning the midnight oil on it, so my brain is a little bit smushy. But I'm having so much fun because you kind of forget where you started when you do these courses. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so much information that I've just learned that has become habitual and are things that I no longer think about at all, like photographing my work and documenting my work, and having to like go back to like when I started doing that in 2004. Oh my gosh, that was such a long time ago. Okay, so, and we were documenting with film, by the way. So to go back and figure out, obviously I don't document through film anymore. But to go back to those things that have become such a just like a non-thinking part of my practice, and to explain them to everyone. But it's so important. I still see professional artists today even apply to our gallery when we do a call for art, and they have these terrible photographs, and sometimes I edit because I'm kind. I edit them for them in Photoshop, but also it starts with a good image and capture, and I'm just like, you have to figure this out. Like your artwork is so stunning, and you're doing a disservice to your work if you're not photographing it properly. And or scanning. I love scanning. Scanning is my favorite way to anyways, that's a whole course in itself. But I did go through it in our large scale portrait course, as well as many other things, of course, to shortcut everyone into, I went to art school for 4 years, and I'm selling these things in like a 3-hour course. So it's definitely intense, but you can take them at your own pace, and it's just a wealth of information, and you can always refer back to your workbook. So far, so good. Everyone's really happy. I'm happy. I'm a little tired, but I'm super happy. That's the thing about passion. That's the thing about when you're passionate about something, the work doesn't seem like work. It's just the good along with the bad. And I know we talk about that all the time, but it's not easy, that's for sure, but it feels good, and it's like almost an obsessive thing when you're in doing something you love. And that's what I hope for the world. That's what I hope for the young people I work with. That's what I hope for the people who join our Color Me Happy community. I hope that you can build your everyday ordinary as extraordinary into doing something that you absolutely are obsessed with, and that can let you live your life at the same time. That is my dream. And of course, we couldn't do this without our sponsors, Nouveau Laser and Aesthetic Center. They are so great. They make me feel wonderful in my own skin and confident. And I wasn't always confident, especially when it came to on-camera stuff. Still a little bit hesitant, but getting better. And Red Bicycle Communications, they are just super savvy. And I love everything they do and everything they design and everything they do in the community. And Oasis Hot Yoga and Spin Studio, of course, like, oh my gosh, everyone needs self-care and downtime, and it truly is an oasis. So thank you so much. Couldn't do this without you. Thank you. And we will all the love, my friends, and take care, and feel free to reach out anytime. We're happy to chat. If you're looking for some time for yourself to relax, release, and unwind, Oasis has the perfect space for you. They offer yoga and spin classes of all levels. Whether you are a beginner or advanced student, Oasis thrives on accommodating all aspects of the practice. Let their serene environment and gracious staff help you in your journey of peace, healing, and strength. Sign up online at www.oasishotyogastudio.com or by downloading the Oasis Hot Yoga Studio app. Feel like yourself. You deserve it.